Today on Locked on Rockies, another solid week of baseball for the Rockies in the spring, but really, deep down, doesn't mean anything.
You are Locked on Rockies, your daily Colorado Rockies podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Rock on Rockies fans, welcome into the Locked on Rockies podcast for today, the 28th day of February in the year 2025. I'm your host of the Locked on Rockies podcast, Paul Holden, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked on Podcast Network, where you can find your team every day. If your team is the Colorado Rockies, guess what? You're in the right spot because that's what we do around here. Free and streaming on your favorite streaming services and on the Locked on Rockies YouTube channel, where you can be part of the show. You can fire off your Rockies hot takes. You can let me know what's on your mind, because that is a big theme of our episode today, taking comments and questions from the Locked on Rockies YouTube comment section. So if you got questions, you got stuff on your mind, head on over there, fire off those takes down there, and let's talk about it on the show. Rockies beat the Dodgers yesterday. And I'm recording a little later today, so currently trailing to the Cleveland Guardians for their game this morning, or today, I should say, not this morning. So we won't be reacting specifically to the game that's ongoing right now as of recording today against the Guardians. And in reality, it's another spring training game, because that's kind of the theme of the show. And obviously, I think it's been the theme kind of throughout this week of, all right, here's the good signs. Here are the bad signs. Here are things to be excited for. Here are things to look at and follow. But I'm just kind of struggling with something here. I'm struggling with really buying into it or allowing myself to get too excited by things. And I'll dive into more of that and explain that here in just a moment. But before we do, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. And I want to start with a comment here from Marco here. Absolutely love to see the run production, and I already fear that a little hope is starting to take root in me. Admittedly, I haven't paid much attention to previous spring trainings except for injuries, but based on what you've seen in the past, are there any stats in or trends from spring training that we should all be paying attention to that would carry over to the regular season besides the troubling strikeouts? And I think it relates a little bit to what Cassidy said on the show yesterday. They're talking about, well, how are we going to know? How can we figure out some of the stuff that we want to see, the little details, the small things, when we can't actually even watch all the games, when we can't even see everything? So it kind of just all feeds into where I'm at with spring training right now. Yes, there are stats that you should follow. Like, for example, is it time to start worrying about Nolan Jones? Nolan Jones is not performing well right now in spring training for the Colorado Rockies. But am I going to sit here and I'm immediately going to say, it's over? I ain't expecting nothing from Nolan Jones this year, considering he struck out 4 times in 15 plate appearances, has yet to pick up his first base hit of the spring here, at least according to Baseball Reference. Like I said, if something happened in that Guardians game, not sure. Is it time already? I mean, because those are warning signs, right? That is a warning sign right there already from Nolan Jones. But on the flip side, it's 15 plate appearances over the last 2 weeks in spring. So I think, to answer your question, Marco, health is the first thing to look at. And it's, are they comfortable? Are they able to perform the baseball activities? You're going to hear it, obviously, best shape of my life, best shape of my life, best shape of my life. But the things that I focus on, I'm like, okay, look at how German Marquez is talking. Look at that velocity at 98. Look at those type of things. And that's kind of the health type of stuff. Do they actually look ready to go? Did they show up to camp in a spot where it's not, they got to train and get themselves ready throughout spring training? Were they training and getting ready going forward and getting to that spot? I think the Rockies have a lot of young guys that don't want to squander any opportunities. So this spring is a big deal for them. So their performance it matters. Every at bat matters, right? And Nolan Jones shouldn't be sitting there and saying that he's guaranteed a spot there in left field, thinking he's automatically the starter if these trends continue to follow throughout the spring. So just as much as there's like, look at these stuff to be worried about or look at the stuff to be excited about, we still have basically another month of spring training baseball alone. And I don't necessarily know what we're going to be able to take away from it. The biggest thing, I guess, it will be the performance of the outfielders and who's going to get that right field spot. That's obviously one to watch. But, like, I don't know if I can tell you that just because Herman's looking good or saying he's feeling good and he's hitting that 98, that it's going to translate into the season. What happens when Herman's got to go on the road and pitch in Pittsburgh and it's cold and rainy or put in these other environments? What's going to happen when you're starting to see the best in the business? What's going to happen when you match up against not a Dodgers spring training team, but a Dodgers full strength team? And I just don't know if we get enough. I don't know if spring training can really answer any of those questions for you. And not to, and this isn't me sitting here saying, oh, spring training's worthless. Spring training isn't important. No. It's just the weird kind of confusion I feel about spring training. Like I don't want to overlook the fact that they're opening up spring and scoring runs and things like that. Like, those are good signs. But does it necessarily make me overly confident in the Rockies offense as a whole? Does it make me think that, oh, all right, the spring's here, boom, 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 we're rocking and rolling. It's going to be a great offensive season. And now I'm not quite getting there. And it might change, right? I mean, again, if it's going to look different a month from now, this conversation will sound differently because we're getting closer to the season. We're going to be getting guys going deeper in games, going longer, getting looks at lineups that are closer to the opening day lineups. But right now, at this stage of spring training, everything still feels really up in the air to me. Everything still feels like it's something that it's like, okay, I can focus on Nolan Jones. I can focus on the right field competition. I can focus on the catcher competition and see. But are you going to get enough to really make up your mind? Are you really going to see enough from some of these guys to be confident that they should make the club? And that's what makes this, an important time for the evaluators and the coaching staff and Bud Black and everyone making those decisions. Obviously, every pitch matters for that evaluation and that part of the game. But for me as the fan, or for what I'm looking at, it's kind of hard for me to get the idea, especially when you consider here, and it's not like a good spring is going to change any narrative about the Rockies, right? It's not like if the Rockies have, a great spring and end up being a team well above 500 in the Cactus League, that going into the regular season, the national narrative about the Rockies is going to change. So that's what's so weird to me about spring training. It's so long. There's so many variables. There's so many things that go into it that maybe I'm not looking at it in the right ways. Maybe I'm not studying it in the right ways. Maybe I'm not breaking it down in the right ways compared to other people who are about the ins and outs, analytics, stats, all that stuff. If you know what you're looking for exactly, arm angles, release angles, bat velocity, if you're in the know about how all of those things all intertwined and work, I think you can start figuring out and start being able to detect bad habits, bad starts, things like that. But I just don't think I'm going to be able to myself. I'm going to be able to make fully confident decisions or anything about the Rockies at this stage of spring training. Again, as it goes on, as the games get a little bit more serious when it comes to starters and pitchers going a few more innings instead of going just the one or the two, how does that start looking? Is the strikeout problem still a problem? Because if you start seeing some of those trends, because there are some things that will stick out, like we talked about already this week with the strikeouts and the walks from the pitching staff. If those trends are persistent throughout spring training, I believe that it's not that crazy of a leap to think that they're going to continue into the regular season. But also, am I supposed to really get caught up in 2 weeks of spring training ball? That's what's so tough about right now. And a team like the Rockies, right? Because you could be sitting there and competitive teams and other things. It's like, oh, here's this guy. He's returning from injury, or he's getting his first appearance of the year. There's so much going on within the Rockies and on a lower level that if you're not following the Rockies, you're maybe not paying attention to. That it's hard for me to keep up and know exactly what I want to look for, exactly what I want to see from players in spring training. I know I obviously I don't want them to cool off, but part of me is like, is a challenging spring a sign of you're going to be able to have a better regular season because you're already feeling what's wrong, what's not working, and you're able to adjust and move and overcome that? Is a good spring the sign of a good summer to come? Is it going to get you this, if Doyle's had a pretty good start, Tovar's had a pretty good start, some of these guys have had some pretty good starts. Can we be confident in what that means going forward? And I know that doesn't actually specifically answer Marco's question. And I know that it just sounds like, so what are you telling us? What's the point? You just don't know. And kind of, yeah. And not to make it sound like, to negate my caring or knowledge or following of the Rockies. I just think, like, with so many things with not only on this team, but within this organization are still so much in the air that I don't know exactly where we're going to be next week at this time and after spring training next month, and where we're looking at as we're getting ready to enter into the season here and head to opening day. Because it's still a weird time. There's still way too much to figure out for us to sit here and be abundantly confident in anything that we've seen in spring training so far. Maybe there's some examples on the outside that you can point to and that you're confident in, and you're like, well, what about this? And that will be the option that gets you, what you need and kind of answers that question for you. But I think there's so much to figure out still from this spring training that simply answering the question of what are the stats we should look for. I think the key areas that we know and we've talked about time and time as weaknesses are areas, but like, I don't know what a bad spring means for Nolan Jones. I don't know what that means for a change for the Rockies. I don't know what a great spring for Zach Veen means. Is that enough? Is a great spring enough to send the message? Same with Dollander. Is a good spring enough to send the message to say it is time? It is time to make this move? Maybe. We've talked about players forcing their way into the lineups, forcing their way onto the team through performance, and now's the time to perform. I just kind of get caught in a crossroads of what to take from spring, what to get excited about, all mixed with the copium basically of this being the part of, it's baseball, but it's not real baseball. It's winning baseball for the Rockies, but in the regular season, it ain't going to mean anything. It's just kind of a tough one for me to just, I can't just sit here and bask in spring training success for the Rockies and think that it's all going to be okay. I think is maybe the best way to put that. Am I crazy? Am I wrong? Does that make you less confident in the team or less confident in me if about being at this stage? I don't know. You can let me know in the comments below, because we're going to talk about more comments from the Locked On Rockies YouTube comment section coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Before we do that, though, got to tell you about the folks that help make this show possible, and that includes FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth-quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your bets into a same-game parlay. The app is super easy to use, secure, and when you win, you can get paid instantly and easily. And remember, if you're catching something live and you want to get in on the action, well, they got that live betting feature as well, so you never miss an opportunity to win big. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your one shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. This is the Locked On Rockies podcast for free and streaming on your favorite streaming services, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your team every day. If you're looking for your second listen of the day, our pal Sully's got you covered. He's covering things from around the world of Major League Baseball, so don't miss out on that. And, of course, if you need more Colorado sports coverage, Locked On Broncos, Locked On Avalanche, Locked On Nuggets, and Locked On Buffs, also available for your listening pleasure as well. We are reacting to some comments from the YouTube channel today. I was also diving into kind of just some of my thoughts about the state of spring training, how to break it down, where my head's at when it comes to where we're at right now with the spring with the Rockies. And it's a weird spot. I'm not going to lie. It is a weird spot there. Let's dive back into the Locked On Rockies YouTube comment section here and get some more comments here. Nicholas says, as a Cubs fan, I hope KB has a bounce back year. Almost feels like this is it. Feels like this is his last chance to prove he is still a top player. Hey, I'll take contributing player, my friend. And I appreciate that too. Of course, it's very tough to watch your favorite players not only leave teams, but also leave teams and then not succeed. Personally, my heart breaks for Trevor Story. Obviously, I know that he's still been able to contribute when he's on the field, but it's kind of one of those things where it's just like, no, I know this guy's good. I know this guy's good. You got it. He's just got to get the right opportunity. He's got to stay healthy, and he's going to do it. It's going to be big, and it's going to be boom. With Chris Bryant, I think the truth has to start becoming that he cannot be your best player anymore, right? Like it was a different story when he first came over here and the health and all that stuff where he was supposed to be the big factor, the big game changer, right? Now he needs to be a performer. Now he just needs to contribute. I don't need Chris Bryant to be an all-star. I don't need Chris Bryant to be the best DH in baseball. I need Chris Bryant to be a contributor. I need Chris Bryant to help the Rockies score runs. I need Chris Bryant to bring some depth to the lineup. I don't need him to show me that he is an MVP player or anything like that. Obviously, if he if he is able to go back into and uncork, some of that old Chris Bryant magic from the Cubs days, obviously you're ecstatic. But I again, just as we're kind of talking about reevaluation and kind of where are we at right now in terms of what we're thinking, what's going to be best, I need Chris Bryant to just be a positive WAR player. I just want to set the floor there. Not 0, not 0.5. I want it at like 1 at the minimum. And that's not asking a lot. That's basically asking stay healthy, stay on the field, and contribute. That's what the Rockies need Chris Bryant to do. Chris Bryant being even close to one of his greatness of the past helps the Rockies. Chris Bryant can be a productive member of this lineup. The Rockies have to put him in the best position to succeed, and he has to perform when given the opportunities. Again, not much you're going to be able to do when your back gives up on you and if your body is not working with you. That's one of the biggest challenges that athletes face is if the body just isn't working with you anymore. And that happens. That certainly happens. But this doesn't mean that we can just sit there and it doesn't mean that you can just sit back on your heels and just throw your hands up about Chris Bryant and what's going to happen. This is a year where he has to contribute. Again, I don't necessarily know what that'll mean for the bigger picture or anything, but if Chris Bryant can't stay healthy, if Chris Bryant can't contribute this year, questions have to start being asked. They have to. They are not the first team to deal with a tough situation. They are not the last team that's going to deal with the tough situation when it comes to a contract and something like this. But like I said, I don't need Chris Bryant as a top level player. I will happily take it up with I completely lost words. I will happily take the great Chris Bryant. I just want good Chris Bryant. I just want Chris Bryant that contributes. I just want Chris Bryant to be a positive WAR player for the Colorado Rockies. That's what I'm looking for there. But thanks for stopping by, Nicholas. Really appreciate that. Nathan says, if Nolan Jones continues to struggle this spring and Veen keeps showing out, is there any world we see a Veen, Doyle, Beck starting outfield on opening day? Nolan either fourth outfielder or starts in AAA. Certainly a I mean, I don't think anything's off the table in terms of that. I don't think. I mean, I think the Rockies obviously will want Nolan Jones, and believe in Nolan Jones. But Nolan Jones should not just be given the role based off of one season. Nolan Jones, we can't just sit here and rely on one good season of work. This is another example. It's not in the same vein of Chris Bryant, but it's how does Nolan Jones bounce back, and how does Nolan Jones prepare himself to get himself back into being a contributor, being someone that is a game changer for the Colorado Rockies? How do you get him there, and how does this team help him get there? Some stuff might still be a little tricky. You might be seeing some stuff that's trickling over from last year. But we also saw at the end of the year how Nolan Jones went. How is that how will that pan out? But Nolan Jones is, I think, the prime example of a guy that I don't think we're going to have a clear idea and understanding to make a call like that until a couple of weeks from now. But to answer your question, I think it's certainly a possibility. I mean, I believe Nolan Jones still has minor league options. And again, if he's not ready, if the back is, still giving him issues, if he's still dealing with maybe some lingering health stuff, certainly you can go there. Now, Veen and Beck are going to have to perform throughout the spring. I think Zach Veen only makes the lineup if his spring from start to finish is good. No down periods, no nothing. Good. That's what gets Veen into the lineup, or gets him at least making the major league roster there. But I don't think it's out of the question. Certainly, Nathaniel. I don't think that there's something that crazy. I don't think that that's far out there for that. But anyway, Luxe says, I like how we're scoring a lot more runs, but man, 13 strikeouts and only one walk is not good at all. That's how we can lose a lot of games this season, just like last. Strikeout after strikeout after strikeout. And so I'm with you, Lux. Strikeouts, big focus for this Rockies team here. And I'd love to see them improve in that area. Again, going back to Marco's question, strikeouts are my biggest thing I'm watching here. What the strikeouts, walks, I want to see that on base percentage. I want to see what those look like as well. Those are some key stats there. I'm easily the biggest warning sign from the Rockies offense has been the fact that they're still striking out quite a bit here. So, all right, a couple more comments here to wind down the show and enter into the weekend. Let's do that after we take a quick break right here on Locked On Rockies. This is the Locked On Rockies podcast for free and streaming on your favorite streaming services, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your team every day. And if your team is the Colorado Rockies, you're in the right spot, because that's what we do around here each and every day, free and streaming on your favorite streaming services and on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel, where we're pulling all our comments and questions from today. So if you want to be part of the show, if you want to fire off your Rockies hot takes, you know where to go, the Locked On Rockies YouTube section. Deadshot says, good to see some games with good scores. I'm going to see all of next week's game in person. I hope we can carry a little of this momentum over. And Cassidy is right. I cannot stand not being able to watch. Yeah, I've seen a lot of that. And as the media landscape around baseball continues to change, and maybe with this change from ESPN, and I'm reaching a little bit here. Spring training could be that next thing where you get the access to, right? Tough to watch minor league games before. They started rolling minor league games into the packages that you could start buying, giving you more access to the minor league games and the minor league broadcasts. And I think that helps. And I do think that there is a big, hungry appetite for people to watch and consume spring training baseball. It's a really interesting kind of it's an interesting thing when you think about investing, right? And when you think about from the media side and from the broadcaster side, investing in that, investing in the resources, investing in the people, investing in the time that it takes to put on those broadcasts, when you do them, when they air on the other networks, XYZ. But it is kind of like you got it all there. Like the infrastructure does seem to be there. The even, I mean, it just seems a little strange. Certainly does. But I would say that situation is probably more complicated than you think, especially when you consider like it takes a lot of people to run a broadcast. Like from the top down, like you got to have the crew there. You got to have the on-site crew. You got to have all the techs. You got to have everybody set it up. And then you got to have someone back at HQ, setting that up, making sure the feeds are all going to the right spot, making sure everything's there. You got the graphics. You got this. You got all the people it takes to run a baseball broadcast. And you're about to do it from what, end of next month till October. You got 7 months coming up of that. So as much as I do feel for people, as much as I do feel that it's always great when we can watch the games, when we can see the clips, when we can see what happens, when we can follow the improvements. It's a bit more of an investment and a bit more difficult than you might think. Especially when you're just considering of how many crews do they have? How much staffing do they actually have to make this happen from across not only the on-site people, but across the network that you would be airing and broadcasting to? But infrastructure is still, there's still a lot of infrastructure there. We still see some games. We still get broadcast games, right? We still get games on the radio. Why can't we see a little bit more? But I think fans would like a little bit more insight into why, but there are some logistics, I think, that get in the way. And it's just a grind. The regular season is a total grind. So I do think that, this being a chance for it's spring training for the broadcasters too, right? Getting warmed up, getting back into the groove of things, getting everything ready to go. I think that that's something to keep in mind as well with when you're thinking about that, those spring training broadcasts there. Jim says, I don't like the strikeouts, but on the plus side, they blanked the Dodgers today. Oh, yeah. Hey, you'll take that, right? Anytime. And again, kind of going back to our big topic of the first thing, Dodgers have won 2 games in spring training so far. Are you panicking about the Dodgers? Are you worried about the Dodgers? Do you think that that's an omen of things to come? Do you think that's a warning sign for the Dodgers? A slow start to spring? I don't think so, right? Spring training is just such this time where it's when bad things are happening, you just say, it's spring training, don't worry about it. When it's good things, you're like, hey, hot start to the year, hot start to the spring. What are we thinking? What are we hoping? Could be cool. Right. So I think that's actually an interesting way to look at it, right? When you're breaking down how you think and how you perceive spring training. Are the bad team or are the good teams that are performing poorly in spring, is that a doom and gloom warning sign for what's to come? Or is it just exhibition baseball that doesn't really mean anything in the grand scheme of things, and let's just get the work in and let's just do what we need to do? Record be darned. I think there might be a little bit more of the latter there. All right, last question here before we wrap up the show. And this is from TK. Tovar, 0 strikeouts and 4 walks so far is awesome to see. Zach Agnos better break camp with the club. I think that the bullpen race is going to be really interesting. And the arm barn, as our friends at Blake Street Banter, will certainly be one of those competitions to watch there. I don't know what I do wonder what results are you looking for from the coaching staff there in order to make those decisions? I think Harding was mentioning that there was another part of the closer debate. Halverson, Vodnik vying for that closer role. Lot of intrigue about that closer spot and who's going to be shutting down games for the Rockies. And the Rockies turn into young guys to be closing out those games. What will that mean for them going forward? We'll kind of just have to wait and see, because I do think the youthful arms, the young arms of the Colorado Rockies are going to be put into some big spots this year in order to get the job done and seal some wins. So we'll see how it happens. Folks, what are your thoughts about spring training? Do you think that spring training is a bit weird? Do you get excited? Do you get down in the dumps about spring training? Let me know in the Locked On Rockies YouTube comment section, because that is going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Rockies. You can find us free and streaming on your favorite streaming services, and you can also find us on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel, where you can be part of the show. You can fire off your Rockies hot takes. You can let me know what's on your mind when it comes to the Colorado Rockies. For your second listen of the day, go check out our pal Sully on Locked On MLB. And if you need more Colorado sports coverage, Locked On Broncos, Locked On Avalanche, Locked On Nuggets, and Locked On Buffs, free and streaming on your favorite streaming services. Until next time, I'm Paul Holden saying so long from the Locked On Rockies podcast.